Now loading this month's Leadership Live, where we dive in deep with today's top MedTech leaders, allowing you the chance to learn from the best. Leadership Live starts now.
Good morning, Floodgate family. Welcome to another edition of Leadership Live. We are absolutely ecstatic to have Christine Horton with Visura Technology that is clinically, I'm going to forget it now, you just said it. What's the product?
Inevitable.
Clinically, they're clinically inevitable, and I love it. So, Christine, thank you so much for joining us on this Leadership Live. Looking forward to learning a lot from you and all your leadership.
Thanks for having me, Joe. Great to be here. Really appreciate the opportunity to join the ranks of all the great people that have been on before me.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, Christine, I've gotten the chance, I've been lucky to meet you several times, work together, get to know Visura, et cetera. But most of the people joining us don't. So tell us a little bit about yourself and, of course, some of the cool things you're doing at Visura.
Sure. Yeah, so I am the CEO of Visura Technologies. It's a great honor to actually be here and lead the commercial charge at the company. But I've been in MedTech for, I'm just going to say over 30 years, because at some point you got to stop counting the little numbers that come behind the decades. So I've been in MedTech for a long, long time. And primarily I'm a startup person. Started my career, though, in the sciences. So science-based person, love data. I've kind of believed that in some respect, without data, you're just an opinion, which is okay in some circumstances, but I want to see data. I want to see things that really prove out what we're talking about. And I think that's become more and more important. From the science side of my start in a small medical device company where I actually had two great mentors that I hope to weave in some stories as we go through the next few minutes, I went into clinical research and then went into more commercial areas of business and leadership roles from there. Visura is really at an exciting time. I was hired just over 3 years ago to commercialize a cardiology device that is really needed. And you used our new line, our new little phrase, which is we are clinically inevitable. And what that means is we have now crossed the threshold of prove to us that it's needed. And that's because you need to see what you're doing in the human body. Mm-hmm. And there's nowhere, and there's never been a time in the human body when it's better to do something blind. And so we have a camera that goes on the end of a TEE probe, and it allows a physician to see what they're doing when they're intubating and placing that TEE probe. Huge advantage to see what you're doing, even though it's just for a short amount of time. And so that's where we're at. We're commercializing. We're working really, really hard. We're a very small team, but we're getting it done. And so it's a crazy good time for the company. But and so we're having a good time. But it's never a dull moment in the life of Visura.
I love it. I love it. I think there's probably a leadership lesson in the product. You got to be able to see where you're going, right? I mean, so I like it. And I love the background of coming from clinical research into commercial. That's usually, you don't see that crossover very often, but it gives you such a good baseline to, as your point, know what the evidence tells you. What does the evidence say? Not what you believe, but what does the evidence say? And having that foundation has, I'm sure, served you well in these years, right?
Yeah, it definitely has. And I think one of the important things that, especially like as a commercial leader, you have to understand, you have to have a really well-rounded perspective. So you don't have to be an engineer to understand the important elements of your product and how it works and the engineering aspects of it. You don't have to be a regulatory or a clinical expert to understand your 510K or your PMA, and you don't have to be a clinician to understand it, but you need to understand enough. You need to have done your research and your homework to be really well-rounded in a number of areas in order to commercialize a product or a company and talk really intelligently and with some decisiveness and some authority, but also be humble at the same time.
I mean, I think you brought up some really good points of kind of what it takes to be a MedTech leader, having that well-roundedness, being intellectual curious, as being a good leader in MedTech. I'm curious if there's anything besides those elements that you would share that, kind of makes a good leader in this space in that 30 plus years.
Yeah. Never give up. Never ever give up.
Yeah, that's always the biggest one, right?
Yeah, there's a whole lot of lessons. Perseverance. I think you're going to hear a lot of no's. It's how you take those no's. It's how you take if you're, there's so many lessons. Like, I think, and there's a lot of people that have said this before me. I'm not saying anything that's probably earth shattering, but how you fall down is one thing. It's more how you get back up.
Yeah.
That is really the difference. I have failed far, far more times than I have succeeded. I think like probably everybody. And I think those lessons of when you get back up, how do you get back up, and how, like, what did you take away from it? Yeah. We have failed a lot just in the last 3 years at Visura. We have, redone, restructured, rethought, reconfigured, we've everythinged, but we've done it in a way where we made decisions very quickly, very nimbly as a team. And that, I think, is how you persevere, you continue to make progress, maybe one step forward, but you got to go 3 steps, or, one step back, but you have to do those 3 steps forward in a small company, especially in medical device. So yeah, I think there's a lot of lessons there, but you can't be afraid of no, and you cannot be afraid of failure.
I love it. I mean, and I think that's great suggestions on those. The lessons are. It's not about what happens; it's about how you get up, right? And how the perseverance to get up, but then also taking the pause and really learning and internalizing from that mistake, so you can improve again. Is there any specific lesson that you said, hey, you know what? I've learned from this. I got back up. This is one I've learned from that you could share.
Oh, wow. Yeah. You know what? Maybe we come back to that one, because there's a lot. There's a lot of them. There's almost so many that I'm like, I got to go through the little catalog in my brain right now, Joe. And then I have to think which ones are really like appropriate. There's been some tough lessons. Yeah. So let's
we'll come that. And I'm audience listening, please comment below, because we're going to pull in those questions at the end. I'm going to ask Christine some other questions, but I'm sure you have some great questions for her as well. So comment below. We're going to pull those in at the end. Now, as we know, really they're, high performers on teams, something near and dear to my heart in doing that. I'm curious, what have you found as you're developing teams, or you mentioned your mentors? How have you developed high performers? What have you seen? What have you done?
Yeah. So I think I love this question. And I saw this come across. I think that with high performers, you want to really not stop them, number one, because high performers are people that typically come in with a lot of passion, a lot of energy, and you don't want to stop that, right? You don't want to squelch it. You want to focus it. So I think that the most important thing is, where do you need that energy? Where do you need that high performer? And one thing that I think we've had to do as a small company is, I have a high performer right now that is a marketer, in fact, but that high performer we needed to put in a different area. And because this individual is a high performer, they've been able to perform well in another area. So one thing I would say is, stay open to people being high performers in other areas that maybe you hired them to be, let's say in one particular part of the organization or with one particular title. But high performing people have the ability to adapt and to perform really well and transition really well in other areas of the company. And I think a lot of times are very willing to do that. And so I think that you can really cultivate that. And a company can get a lot out of a high performer when they're willing to be a little bit more open to seeing that talent go in a different direction.
Yeah, no, that's a couple really good suggestions. Is that's high performers. You got to give them give the ability to run, to be able to move. And I think I had an old leader says you don't want to take a thoroughbred and put him in a stable, right? You need to put him in the field, give them ability to move. And then secondly is kind of probably with that containment is don't constrain yourself in thinking. You got a high performer. Where can they impact the organization best? And it might not be the role you originally had, or that role might have moved past them or changed as companies change, and be open to that concept is what I heard you say. So,
right. Exactly. 100%.
Yeah. Great suggestions. Now, finding those high performers, and evaluating and bringing them onto the team. What's worked? What do you do?
Yeah. I'm a huge proponent of network. Yep. So we're very, even when you're looking at hiring in different areas, I love to have somebody that knows somebody, no matter which direction or how we're recruiting that individual. I want to make sure that we're getting somehow a bit of a known entity, right? That a lot of people look good on paper, and how they fit into your organization isn't through a piece of paper. And so I really like a network. And because my team has also 20 to 30 years of experience, we have a great group of fractional teammates that are a part of our organization. We rely heavily on evaluating people, maybe in a bit of an untraditional way sometimes, just to make sure that we are getting the right fit, because we are moving right now at lightning speed. In 3 years, what we've done is honestly what most companies that are larger, even mid-sized, do in probably 7 to 8 years. So when you move fast, the fit really, really, really matters, because we don't have time to not have a great fit and not have great talent that can really jump in and do excellent work as soon as they're part of the organization.
That's awesome. No, I think you bring up something really important, is that paper gives you the experience.
Right.
But but really what matters is you kept saying fit or attitude or that culture. What's that alignment of that group? And, that an understanding that they fit that ability, for you to be able to do it, and using the network to do it. Sometimes you don't have a network, like sometimes it's great to know somebody, but you might not. Yeah. And so having mechanisms that uncover that attitude, that underlying attitude that fits it where you need. Because, hey, going to work at a larger, like a Medtronic or a Boston Sci might be very different than where you guys are. So there's a different attitude, different capabilities, that you're going to be looking for in the talent you need versus a different role. So I think a couple great points.
And I think it's important on the reverse side of that too, right? Like folks that are looking to enter a role or a company need to do the same. They need to reverse what I just said. You need to do the same homework. One of the things that we found interesting is because the word startup is kind of thrown out there so much, a lot of people think that they know what a startup is, when in fact they don't. And a lot of people think, oh, I work for a company that's 250 people. That's a startup. And we laugh. We're like,
how quaint.
my title may be CEO, but there's days I feel like the janitor. And if that's what I need to do, then that's what I'm going to do. And then there's days I'm talking to the board and investors and shareholders. And, so we all do whatever we have to do on any given day to get the job done. And so it's really important for folks that are looking to take a role in a really small company to understand exactly what you're signing up for too, and kind of do that same due diligence, because oftentimes you may be used to not having to ship your own stuff and, having different resources. And while we have a great time, it's a different set of, it's a different working environment. Then you have a lot more autonomy, but you have a lot more expectations to be able to really, truly be autonomous too.
Yeah. With Spider-Man said, with power comes great responsibility, right? So,
Yeah.
like you have the power of autonomy, but you have to do just about everything to make it happen, right?
Yeah.
And
Right.
so I think that that's a good suggestion. And in taking the time and understanding the company culture as well and how you fit in it, not just what the role expectations are, but the people.
Yep.
Yeah. Because it's got to be a fit. I mean, this is it's not fun, having the wrong role. So it's a really good suggestion. Now, there's a lot of people listening right now that aren't leaders, but want to be, right? And want to be noticed and want to be on that track record, track. What would you recommend for that?
I would recommend start acting like a leader before you're asked to be a leader, right?
Yeah.
Like, don't wait for somebody to come to you and say, look, we want to make you a manager. We're thinking about this for you. Or first of all, start acting like what you want to do. Start asking for what you want. The only person, and this is probably, I've said this to 100 people, if I've said it to one person, maybe even more, you are your only advocate for your career. So if you want something, if you want leadership, and which, by the way, isn't in the cards for everybody. That's one thing that I think everybody thinks that they need to do, is get to a point where they have a lot of direct reports, or get to a point where leadership can take a lot of different forms. It can take a formal title. It can take informal. It can just be that you're highly respected within your organization and people just come to you and they listen to you when you speak. So it can take a lot of different forms within an organization. But I think if you want that formal leadership role, advocate for yourself, advocate in what you do, how you show up, put in the extra hours. If you want a leadership role, expect that you're going to put in some extra hours. Expect that you need to start doing, maybe going above and beyond on a project. Expect that when you think you're ready, start raising your hand, start saying, I would like this to happen within the next 12 to 18 to 24 months. If you don't ask for it, if you don't act like you want it, it will not happen. It doesn't miraculously just happen if you sit around hoping that it does. So, I think that you have to make it happen for yourself. And I would especially say that I think there are groups of people that are great at going for the next job on when maybe they check 50% or 75% of the boxes. I would say, if you think you've got majority of the skills for that next role, whether within your organization or outside your organization, apply for it. Go for it. Most of the time when we evaluate candidates, we're like, but we really like them. They're a good fit. And we can teach these 3 or 4 things. They'll catch on to it. So I would say, really, again, advocate for yourself. Nobody else is going to make it happen for you. HR isn't going to make it happen for you. Your manager isn't going to make it. You are the only one that is ever going to decide where your career goes. And so whether you chart it down, whether you put it on your phone in a note, whatever it works for you, you make it happen. And then, kind of start going for it, because that's the only way it's ever going to happen. And then I think it is really important to decide, are you a formal leader or an informal leader? Do you, are you comfortable being respected but not having direct reports? Are you somebody that, because this is the other thing I say a lot, careful what you wish for. So, with leadership comes a lot. And I had somebody say to me actually 2 weeks ago, it must be so great being a CEO because you have no bosses. And I was like, you're kidding, right? I have more bosses now than I've ever had in my life. I have shareholders. I have a board of directors. I have all these legal rules and regulate. I was like, I have more bosses now than ever before. So I love it. I love my job. I'm the happiest I've been in my career, but you gotta be careful, because with each step in your career, you do take on a lot more responsibility. And at this point in my career, I'm responsible for raising money, which means I'm responsible for ensuring that there's enough, that we get to do what we say we're going to do. We deliver what we say we're going to deliver to our shareholders. We can deliver the right amount of product to our hospitals. And then at the same time, we have enough in the bank to pay all of our employees. Incredible responsibility, right? So, yeah, that leadership, tiering that leadership, just be really thoughtful, I would say, in how you plan and how
what you're getting into. But I think, that foundation of just raising your hand. Hey, I want to do this. This is my goal, right? And I think you said even before that, identify what you really want, right? Make sure that, but that's what you want, ask for it. Yeah. And your point is go for those opportunities. Yeah. Because even if you don't have them, it identifies the gap, and you can ask, okay, I didn't get it because I didn't have X, Y, Z. I hadn't done this. Okay, now
right,
what to do and advocate for your career. You go fill that gap so you can get there.
Right.
Yeah, it's great suggestions. And I think and as you're going for each role, just like interviewing, for the next company or anywhere, make sure you know what you're getting into, and what you're signing up for, and that that is going to be that step that is really that aligns to who you are, because not everyone's made for leadership, and there's different ways to lead and impact organizations. Yeah. So I think those are really great suggestions. I'm going to be asking another question here to Christine, but after that, I'll be pulling in some questions here from the whole Floodgate family here. So please comment below. We'll pull in a couple of those questions. So last one, this is our fun one.
Okay.
Who's your favorite superhero? And why? I mean, you can do this.
Okay. Well, so Joe, this question threw me. I'm going to say, being not a comic book kind of person, I'm going to go with Wonder Woman.
Okay.
Because I think, as somebody that travels so much, actually, this is just my answer. I travel a lot, like a lot of people in med device and a lot of CEOs. And I think it'd be fantastic to have my own invisible plane so that I could go anywhere, anytime, go around air traffic.
Yes.
Bop into a meeting, come right home, not have to sit on the tarmac like I did at LaGuardia for 2 hours last Friday night and miss my personal life. Right. So I'm going to go with, I want to be Wonder Woman. I want to have an invisible plane, and I want to fly that invisible plane. So that's
you got a cool lasso for KOLs and investors. Sure. You can, pull them in.
Yeah. So. I mean, she's got other skills, mad skills, but I'm going to go with that. Primarily, I just want the benefits of being a pilot with an invisible plane that doesn't have to adhere to FAA regulations. So
or TSA for that matter.
Or right? TSA. Yeah. For sure. That's it.
Exactly. Oh, good. Well, let's see what we got for the questions for the Floodgate family here. Got a few questions. So this is just a link to agree on perseverance. Have loved to remember. So is this someone that can just say that, give you a little shout out?
Okay.
Various challenges. And then Natalie, what do you think about the next 12 months? What are you most excited to build or achieve?
Thank you. So, I love the opportunity to answer this. I am, this is going to go back to where we kind of started in this new phrase, in this new campaign that we're working on at Visura, which is clinical inevitability. I am so excited that we are just continuing to train and really get the TCAD system into more and more hospitals. I think when you work in med device, we all start out saying it's because we really want to make things better for patients and physicians. And I think you have to believe that. And I still cover cases. So I still get to be in with the doctors, which I think is an honor, because I then know exactly what I'm talking about when I'm raising money and I'm talking to other people within my ecosystem. But I'm excited because we are really, fingers crossed, going to have a record quarter. And that's what it's looking like for us. And I'm hoping that that's what we continue to build and achieve over the next 12 months, is more and more trained physicians, more and more trained fellows, and getting into more and more accounts so that, they don't do blind procedures anymore. There's absolutely no reason for it.
Yeah, no, I love that. And you're right. Med device, you could create something wonderful, but if no one uses it, it's not having an impact on
Right.
patients.
Right.
So you're crossing that chasm and making that
We
impact
are.
on patients. And that's incredible. So I got a question here from Sarah. I love you talk about the importance of adaptability.
Yeah.
Can you show a time when adapting to change was key to your growth or success?
Yeah. Okay. So day one on this job.
Okay.
Day
All right.
one on this
Tell me
job.
about it.
Yeah. So you never know what you're walking into in a job, right? Because you go through the process, you think you know, because this was not my first CEO role, but it was the first one where I wasn't a founder. So you think you know what you're walking into because of experience and everything you've been through and been a part of companies that have been sold and all this kind of stuff, but you really don't know. So I walked in and I was like, okay, so here we go. This is all right. So this is different and this is different but a lot of it was based on my assumptions. It's not because things weren't what had been presented. They were, but it was just more my assumptions. And so I had to really adapt to, all right, we're going to move manufacturing. We're going to raise a bridge differently, or we're going to do this differently. And so it was immediate, I would say, commercial plan. We had to adapt a lot of things to make sure that we were going to be able to launch and be commercially successful. So it was adaptability on day one, which was January 3rd of 2022, in order to quickly launch this company from an R&D, because we were an R&D company. Yeah. It was an R&D company 3 years ago to a commercially viable organization with a product that we could actually sell, which we started doing about 2 years ago. So yeah, it was there was a lot of adaptability there.
Excellent. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I could imagine, you had a plan in your head, and
yep.
After day one, you realize, okay, that's not going to be the plan. I got to change.
Right.
Yeah. So just some great advice for self-advocacy from Jessica. So I appreciate that comment. I'm curious. I'm going to attach something on there that was in my that no one has asked, but I want to make sure I ask, is women in leadership in MedTech. There's all the questions here have been from women in MedTech. What advice would you give women leaders in MedTech or aspiring women leaders in MedTech?
Yeah. I would go back and I would underscore, I'm the mom of 3 daughters, 3 women, and one in MedTech. And, I would say that I would kind of go back to a comment I made earlier, which is about leadership or jobs in general, positions in general. And that is, if you think you're even nearly qualified for a position, go for that position. Right. Do not wait until you check every box. Do not wait until you talk yourself into, well, geez, I haven't, learned this software, or I don't know how to, do this analysis, or I've never launched. They say they want 8 launches or 5 years of experience, but I only have 3.5. Who cares? Right. That doesn't matter. Go and, bolster yourself, talk obviously truthfully, but bolster yourself, do whatever you can to get that interview, prepare wildly for that interview. Use all your resources. If you're going through, Floodgate, talk to them, use them, make them coach you. They will do it. If you're going on your own, find connections within that organization, do whatever you have to, but don't wait until you check every single box on some list, and whether internally or externally, go for something. I think one of the things that I've noticed in MedTech specifically, just because I've been here so long, is that we lose a lot of women at certain points, and then women, for whatever reason, there's a lot of gaps in resumes. A lot of times it has to do with our family life. Mm-hmm. If you can, my biggest advice to women is always consult or work part-time. Try and keep your foot in the door somehow, We hire a lot. We do a lot of that. We had part-time sales women working for us that, wanted to stay in med device, wanted to stay in sales, but they had one hospital and they were part-time. Do what you can such that you then, when the time is right, you get that, you can do that leadership role down the road. I think that's really, really important. I will tell you one more thing. I don't believe in work-life balance. That is a fallacy. That is not possible. Don't set yourself up for that. Don't think that things are 50-50, work and home and this. That makes things harder for us. There will be times when work is more. There will be time when family is more for those with families or thinking about families. It is, and we could have an entire show on that as a woman that raised girls. Yeah. But with a great husband. But I would say that, if you can, in med tech, it's really important to stay somehow connected to the industry and I think part-time is fantastic. I think I did that in my own career after my third daughter, worked for a great company, worked part-time for like 2.5 years in marketing. There are options out there when you find the right organization. So I think that med device has gotten smarter about keeping the right talent. I know we have. So, long answer, but I think important.
Really, really good suggestions. It starts with, making sure, putting yourself out there, even if you're not fully there, and not waiting to that and being bold, to realizing that work-life balance is a fallacy. Don't let yourself use that as a litmus test. It's going to be seasons, as I like to say, they're up, more of a teeter-totter than a balance. Yeah. And then finally is to be able to, as when you are in that season where family is requiring a higher percentage of your time to stay in the game, as you said, find a way to stay and stay consistent and connected is what I heard you say for sure. So that's some really good suggestions. Well, we're at the top of the half hour. We've gone a little bit over. So great. It was really great connecting with you, listening to you. I know I learned a lot. I love your insight. I can see why you've been such a successful leader. I appreciate you sharing that insight with me, with this entire Floodgate family, so we can all be better and improve the med tech community. So thanks so much. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it.
Thank you.